tons of announcements, like every Microsoft event. We picked a few. What do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, so we're going to cover MR. The cross between AR and VR is a huge goal for Microsoft, and goggles on our face, in our car. It's being used, in a few headsets today, and quite frankly, by an impressive announcement called the Microsoft Mesh. That was I'll call it a layer cake of MR, and this is Anshul Sag's article all the way from the app layer, which includes partner apps through the toolkit, offering middleware like spatial maps and multi-user sync, down to the core platform and multiple devices. And let's say what Apple is trying to pull off, because they're trying to create an entire ecosystem that encompasses Windows and iOS and Android. And it took me a while, Daniel, to really get through what was different from what I saw 2 years ago when I saw an iPhone and an Android tablet and a HoloLens all looking at the same piece of content. And that is that they have now enabled partners to use an entire pre-baked plan. And I think this is a little bit beyond Microsoft just being a good citizen. It's a huge business opportunity, because getting people to use Azure as the universal plug is a huge business opportunity, even if they get 20-30% market share of that. So that was really the highlight. I think they spent a little bit too much time in the keynote, kind of going through this. And I didn't actually have a headset, Daniel. You did, and Anshul did, which I think gave a little bit of extra credibility or credence to the experience. But I think it's safe to say that for businesses, Microsoft has the lead over anybody out there. And I have a hunch that Apple is going for the same space. We've seen a lot of startups flame out, but Microsoft really is in the forefront of XR, just as Anshul says.
Yeah, the overall launch, Pat, was cool. I mean, look, I'm not a gearhead in the sense of I'm not a guy that spends my weekends in my dark room playing with virtual reality, but I do love tech. And I had the opportunity to have both the HoloLens 2 and the HP headset. I set it all up and it was cool. I mean, I walked down a hallway into the room to watch Alex Kipman and Satya do their keynote. I mean, you start to feel like, heck, this is achievable for anybody to attend an event, to be in a space. And I'm impressed directionally with where it's going. I mean, I like the idea of having visibility. Like, I'm still not one of the people that loves being fully masked up. And, from a sensory standpoint, I don't like it as much. Kind of why I like the HoloLens is you still have some visibility. But overall, I thought that was pretty cool. And so you covered a lot of mesh. I think we're going to hear a lot about this in the coming weeks and months and years. This is going to be a platform that Microsoft is going to build this whole ecosystem around. So we'll be coming back to this more and more in future episodes. I do want to touch, though, too, because we've got basically 2 segments on our 6.5 focused on Ignite. And so in this one, we're going to talk about the XR. I also want to talk a little bit about Azure here. And then we're going to spin down later. We'll talk about Dynamics and Teams, because there was so much to cover. And look, Azure, we could spend an entire 30-minute show on, Pat. So I'm going to kind of keep it short. There was a ton of announcements. It was AWS in the sense of having a massive number of announcements related to, everything from, ML and data to applications to containers and services to new edge offerings to migration tools. It was loaded. And I have an op-ed, and I'll put it in the show notes. It'll be coming out later to talk about this. Just a couple of things on cloud and Azure I'm going to mention here, because, again, not enough time, 6.5. But, Pat, I liked Satya's sort of new, broader Microsoft cloud direction, the way he's expressing it. There's a great slide, talks about 5 things: ubiquitous and decentralized compute, sovereign data and ambient intelligence, empowered creators and communities, everywhere, economic opportunity, the global workforce, and trust by design. And really the way I saw it is this: more investment in the edge, more investment in making data accessible and easy to enrich. Citizen developers all the way through experienced coders are going to be welcome in the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem. The cloud is an opportunity to spurn and create jobs, and the company is going to layer zero trust, security, and privacy into all of its layers.
Wow, that's deep, man. That's a lot of corporate speak, Daniel. What does that actually mean?
That's it. That was my analysis. No, in all serious though, what I liked was that he's kind of, he is kind of telling an evolved story, less about what and more about why. So those were all a bunch of whys. Why the cloud matters, why Microsoft and the investments it's making in Azure are important, and why maybe somebody should consider choosing it. One more thing I noted too, Pat, was there is a consensus now with both AWS and Microsoft acknowledging hybrid and multi as the future between the containers and the architecture. And you're laughing at me. I'm not quite sure why yet, but there was an early indication that people thought that people would pick a cloud and they would do everything in that cloud. And so there was new tools through Synapse, through Synapse Link, through Synapse Pathway, Migrate, that are all about making things easier to move between clouds and prem. And so early on, the cloud companies kind of were indicating, yes, they do hybrid, your prem and our cloud, but now it's your prem, our cloud, and their cloud. And that's becoming more pervasive. So there was 8 or 9 new offerings, and we just don't have time to get to them all here, Pat. But they were very interesting. And one that really caught my attention was Percept, which is focused at the edge. And I'll let you quickly touch on that before we move on to the next thing.
Yeah, by the way, I was more admiring you, not laughing at you
well,
on
then,
that.
thank you.
One thing that nobody agrees on, well, the one thing that AWS does not agree on is multi-cloud. They definitely agree with hybrid cloud, but not multi-cloud. But what's interesting is AWS introduced their own Kubernetes orchestrator there. So they didn't say it, but they actually did.
Actions speak louder than words, Pat.
Yeah. Although, Andy Jassy was very deliberate on stage, basically making fun of the whole multi-cloud thing. But I digress. Yeah, Azure Percept is really interesting because not only is it a way to run machine learning at the edge, it actually comes with real hardware RDKs for audio and vision, which, by the way, is kind of very similar to what AWS did in creating this. And the reason that you would, in addition to services with Percept, you would introduce hardware is really just time to market. It's like showing up a dog with a bone is the expression that you hear sometimes. Now Microsoft can come to its customers and say, hey, we have a complete solution, albeit the hardware is coming from partners because Microsoft, aside from Surface, doesn't really want to be in hardware. To say, here are these incredible workloads. And Daniel, you and I have talked about this before. Some of the biggest edge workloads are around cameras, involve cameras, and microphones. So hence we have Azure Percept Audio and Azure Percept Vision. But anyways, very impressive stuff, building out the opportunities. And oh, by the way, all of these devices automagically connect to Azure IoT Hub, which is the orchestrator for all of this that is either in the Azure cloud on-prem or in their public cloud.